Terrific, man. Good to be with you. Thank you.
I got to tell you, I know you have known Caleb Williams for a long time. You knew him in high school, watched him in high school. Tell us what is going to happen here with the Chicago Bears drafting him #1 overall.
Well, I think he's my experience around Caleb is he is an incredible student of the game. I think some of it is instinctive, but some of it is, he puts the work in. He's been coached and trained by, Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. At an early age, he was going to quarterback collective and being around some of the best coaches. And then you get a hold of, Lincoln Riley recruits you, and you're basically the #1 recruit in college, but he never really stop working. So I think he understands the game. He's got, I thought his arm was NFL caliber arm when he was in high school, Gonzaga High School in D.C. And so I thought he would be an elite prospect, and then, he's done nothing but sort of cement that idea. And so, obviously he's got a personality. He's a lot of fun. I think he understands right now that, okay, this little pageantry that we all saw last weekend is over. It's time to go to work. And, there's teams in that division that are got a big head start on where the Bears are at right now. Jordan Love really developed, and, Detroit looks like they're built for the long term. And so I think the Bears right now and Caleb, they've got to kind of get this process started right now. It doesn't happen instantly. There's always a little rough spots, before you get started. So they got to get that process beginning right now.
How do you think Shane Waldron is approaching this challenge, which has got to be as good of a situation as any new offensive coordinator could imagine? What do you think the advice would be that you would give him in terms of inheriting a new quarterback and then all these receiving weapons?
Well, you want to find out how much Caleb can handle. The great ones right now, quarterbacks that is, they do so much at the line of scrimmage. They direct your run game. They get you out of a bad play. They get you into the right play. A lot of that is just experience. It's comfort. It's understanding the clock, the situation, all these different things, the personnel on the field. There's an awful lot that goes into every single play. And so how quickly can Shane right now understand where Caleb is at with handling all of this and handling week in, week out, different game plans, adjustments, nuances. So it's a learning curve. And so I guess what I'm saying here is you can't just overload him because he's the #1 pick. I think you have to go at a decent pace here and see what he can handle, what he can't handle.
So, Brian, the Bears traded the #1 overall pick last year to the Carolina Panthers, who took Bryce Young. And the Bears in return have DJ Moore, Darnell Wright, Tyreek Stevenson, Caleb Williams, Torrey Taylor, and it's going to be completed next year with a second-round pick from Carolina. That's quite a haul. When you think about trades, is that a championship building kind of haul? Do you feel like that? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, listen, I read the same thing yesterday. When you look back on what they have done with that trade, you can't get any more assets and then turn the assets into what you have. DJ was outstanding last year. We all think that, Wright's going to be a really good right tackle. So you just go on and on and on. We'll see what the second-round pick next year provides. But you can't ask for anything more out of a trade than what they got. And it can turn your franchise around. I remember in 2017, this New Orleans Saints had just come off 3 straight 7-9 seasons. And they drafted Ryan Ramczyk, Kamara, Lattimore, and they turned it around, won the division the next year. One draft. Now, that wasn't even with the trade. That was just a great draft. Here they've got all these assets that they've now acquired. They've turned them into really good players, some of them proven players like DJ Moore. And you go, all right, it's time to go. It's time to compete. It is time to compete. They were very competitive the second half of the season last year with some of those, and now they get more. We'll see what Torrey Taylor does in the winds of the Windy City and on that field the way it can be sometimes. But we think that they drafted the right guy. So I think it's if you compare trades in the history of this NFL, I remember Dorsett was traded for, and, he became the second pick in the draft from Seattle, and they won a couple Super Bowls with Tony. So, I just think this has the makings of something really special when we look back on it.
When the Bears were sitting there at 9, Baldy, and they picked Rome Odunze and Olu Fashanu was on the board, wide receiver over offensive tackle, did you view that as any kind of statement, big picture, or was that just a case of, you know what, you don't want to pass on Odunze because he could be one of these guys, and in most seasons he might be the number 1 wide receiver in this draft?
Well, it's interesting because I was actually at the Jets last Thursday night, and I was there to break down their number 1 pick. So, and we were doing a pregame show and whatnot to have me up there. So, honestly, the people just, the pulse in the building is they wanted Odunze, at 10. And I think they would have, if Chicago passed and they took Olu or they took Latu or they took somebody like that, I think the Jets were very comfortable taking Odunze. They would have been quite happy doing it. They took Malachi Corley in the second round, so they got their receiver. But it was a real debate. It's a debate that went on probably in both organizations for a long time. Do you take the tackle and ensure that you keep the offensive line strong for the long term? Or do you take the sexy pick, the fun pick, the receiver? And so I'm sure they had great debates in Chicago about what to do right there. And so now we'll see how it plays out. I don't think the Bears made a mistake, though, in taking Odunze.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think there are some players that you got to bury need and try to get a player like that. And I think when you look at the haul they've got and signing Keenan Allen in the offseason, as you mentioned, DJ Moore, that receiver room is so improved. It's really setting things up for the quarterback, and then you wonder if they did enough on the offensive line. That's the only question, I think, with the offense.
I agree, and they took Kieran Armagagi from Yale, and he's a real prospect now. He played left tackle at Yale. He's very athletic. You got the level of competition is what it was. Playing in the Ivy League like that, but he's got the necessary size you're looking for. Probably got taken where he should have been taken in the third round. And so you throw him in the mix with, Matt Pryor they brought in, and they still have other guys, Tyler Carter and some guys. So, let them go compete. Throw them in there right now. They've got some guys that have backup experience. It looks like the line is pretty set right now. We'll see what Ryan Bates looks like maybe at center. I remember when he was at Penn State, he played center and guard, played guard up at Buffalo, not drafted. But, a guy that looks like he could play the position. So it looks like they've got depth and young guys to develop right now. Now, would they look a lot better if Olu was there and he was competing with Braxton right now for that starting left tackle job and maybe upgrading it? Probably. But Rome Odunze and Caleb, I think, they're going to have a really good relationship on the field for a long time.
It's really exciting here in Chicago, and obviously the division is getting tougher too, Baldy. Saw what the Lions did, and they drafted some cornerback help. The Packers drafted 11 players. They helped their depth. And the Vikings get J.J. McCarthy, and I think they head in a new direction. How do you see the division now, and do you still look at the Bears as being the team that has the most to prove?
It's vastly different than it was last year at this time. Now, the Vikings and Bears might start 2 rookie quarterbacks. Now, everybody wants to say, okay, maybe there is, another player like C.J. Stroud. Maybe these guys play at that level right away, like the way we saw him play. That's not the norm by far. And so there is some kind of incubation period here for these guys to start developing relationships and chemistry and timing and all that stuff you did. The Lions are out front. They've got a veteran team. They've gone right to the brink of the NFC Championship game. The Packers went to Detroit and beat them on Thanksgiving. They went to Dallas and beat the Cowboys. I mean, the things that both those teams have done now is where the Bears want to be. They want to be in the playoffs, go on the road, and go win playoff games, the way both these teams have done. So that's not to say that the Bears can't usurp that, but generally that's how you build teams. You kind of build and you build a confidence in the roster and a belief in your philosophy, and it shows up. It shows up on the field big time in January, like it did for both those teams. So, like, I think the Bears and the Vikings are looking up at the Lions and the Packers, but it's not to say nobody thought the Packers could do what they did last year. So maybe the Bears will be the new Packers this year and, be that team that finishes really strong down the stretch and gets in the playoffs and goes and wins impressively in the playoffs the way the Packers did a year ago. Look, the Packers open up in São Paulo, Brazil, against the Eagles this year. Like, that's a big deal. The fact that game is already out, everybody knows it. That's where the Bears want to be. They want to be that team that the NFL says that's a primetime team, and we don't have any fear of putting them in that spot.
When you think about their team, obviously the Packers lost the Vikings lost a quarterback, drafted a quarterback, lost a defensive end and drafted an edge. The Bears, I don't know. I think Montez Sweat's a great player. I wonder about their defensive line on the other side, and I wonder if they're done. There are guys out there, maybe have some age on them. We've heard rumors about maybe they bring back Yannick Ngakoue after he got hurt last year. He played better when they brought in Tez. I just wonder, as you look at their defensive line, if you feel like you're going into a season, could they make one more move? They've got tons of money. There are veteran guys out there. Would you make one more move if you could? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the best teams in this league right now, if you look at what the Houston Texans just did in free agency, I mean, here comes Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry, Foley Fatukasi. You look at what the Eagles have done, what the Jets did. They just brought in 4 new defensive linemen. They got 6 former first-round picks on their defensive front. You look at the way San Francisco built. These teams are building a defensive front that's 8 deep. Not just, good starters, but good depth. That's why the 49ers did what they did in free agency. Their depth wasn't good enough last year, and it showed up, in the biggest game in the Super Bowl. So the best teams right now are loading up on defensive linemen, and they're paying those guys, too, to come in there and affect the quarterback. And, the starters play 65 or 70% of the time, but when the others 4 come in, it's like a hockey shift. When the other 4 come in, there can't be a drop-off where they're just giving up big plays. And so that's how you build your defense right now up front. So I feel like they need to make another move.
Baldy, thanks a ton. Great catching up with you. Really appreciate all the insight.
Great insight. Thanks, Baldy.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. You bet. Take care.
That was